Jeffrey Dahmer, a serial killer, looked like an average man to all of his victims. He attended college and would frequent many bars, but in reality, he was one of the biggest monsters in the entire world. Jeffrey Dahmer went to The Ohio State University, just a few hours away from here, and lived in Ohio for a few years of his life. He considers living in Ohio one of the biggest parts of his entire life. Dahmer looked like an average, ordinary man, but in reality, he was very sick and very evil. Today, I want to inform you about the background of Dahmer's life, how he became so sick, and the lives of the victims that he took from this world. Dahmer was born on May 21st, 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His mother was a heavy drinker, and his parents fought constantly through his entire childhood. His father was an analytical scientist and showed Jeffrey Dahmer how to use different types of chemicals and the names of the different chemicals and what they were used for. Because of this, Dahmer would go out as a child and find roadkill along the side of the road or in his garden, and he would dissect the animals and use the different types of chemicals that his father showed him to dissect them and clean the bones. According to biography.com, in 1978, Jeffrey Dahmer took the life of his first victim just a few weeks after he graduated high school. He picked up a hitchhiker and he took him back to his place. He was living at his parents' old house by himself at that time. He got the hitchhiker drunk, and once the hitchhiker finally passed out, he strangled him and took him to the shed that he dissected all the animals in as a kid and dissected that person just like the roadkill. According to ThoughtCode.com, Jeffrey Dahmer tried to pursue a higher education at The Ohio State University, but eventually dropped out due to heavy drinking and low grades. He then enlisted in the United States Army and was stationed over in Germany, but after 2 years was discharged due to heavy drinking, and he would drug his fellow soldiers. Dahmer was released back to Ohio and had to face life. His drinking got worse and his parents didn't know what to do. His parents then sent him back to Wisconsin to live with his grandma because his grandma took better care of him than they ever could. His need for control got worse in Wisconsin. He realized that eventually he might have to kill again in order to fulfill his need for control. While working at a chocolate factory in Milwaukee, he got his own apartment and started to frequent many bars and bathhouses around the Milwaukee area. In 1983, he made the full decision that he wanted to kill again in order to fulfill his control needs. According to Murderpedia.com, he would put sleep pills in other people's drinks that he would see in the bars and take them back to his place. Once he got back to his apartment, he would wait for the victim to pass out, either from drinking too much or from the sleep pills that he drugged them with, and then he would kill them in very different ways each time and keep different body parts as trophies or souvenirs and dissect the bodies and get rid of them the same way as the man in 1978. This went on for years and years. He would try different techniques, but usually stayed to the traditional ways that he had, and he would get bolder by not even dissecting the bodies fully sometimes and keeping them in jars to preserve them. According to Infographics Show, in 1991, he tried to pick up a teenager and brought him back into his apartment. He tried drilling a hole to his brain and pouring hydrofluoric acid into his brain, essentially making the teenage boy a zombie that wouldn't leave Jeffrey Dahmer's clutch and that he could control him for the rest of his life. This did not work, however, and he eventually killed the teenage boy and tried this technique again on an older man by using water instead of hydrofluoric acid. That also didn't work, so he just killed that victim. In the same year, 1991, he brought a victim back to his place, and he found out what Dahmer was trying to do to him, so he struck Dahmer in the face and ran outside. And as a police car was driving past, he jumped in front of the police car and told them what has happened. They raided his apartment and found pictures of dead bodies and piles of dead body parts. And while they opened the fridge and the freezer, They found no food, just different body parts, and Dahmer admitted to eating the dead bodies of the victims that he killed. He was sentenced to life in prison in 1991, and in 1994, 3 years into his sentence, he was brutally beat up and killed while in prison. None of the 17 victims would have ever thought that Dahmer was out of the ordinary. This goes to show that an average-looking man could end up being a monster.